Welcoming back our worldwide viewership for another half-assed production. And we're here on Madison Avenue. We're going to run into the Whitney Museum. And we're going to take a look at Charles Burchfield, Heat Wave in the Swamp, paintings curated by Robert Gober.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to have you here today for Heat Waves in the Swamp. The Whitney Museum celebrates the work of the remarkable visionary artist Charles Burchfield in this exhibition, which is curated by another great American artist, Robert Gober. Heat Waves in the Swamp, the paintings of Charles Burchfield, which was organized by the Hammer Museum in collaboration with the Burchfield Penny Art Center in Buffalo, features more than 100 works, as you can see, watercolors, drawings, paintings that come from both private and public collection. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Robert Gober.
Hello. Thanks for coming. The exhibition spans 50 years of Charles Burchfield's working life. A lot of people ask me how the show came about and how I came to make the show. And it came out of a serendipitous event. The director of the Hammer, Ann Philbin, was at our home for dinner, which is not unusual. We're very old friends. And she was enjoying a glass of wine and looking at what was up on our walls. And I have a Burchfield sketch on the wall. And Annie just went off on Burchfield. That he was under-recognized, he was under-known, underappreciated. Young artists were influenced by his work and probably didn't even know that they were influenced. And Annie...
Well, we'll start our little tour here with this painting, which is titled Autumnal Fantasy, and he worked on this from 1916 to 1942. And I think this is an extraordinary piece because not only did he work on it for over 20 years, but it really captures all of the aspects of his work that made him famous. It's like these radiating lines, the vibrating colors, and it shows that he was thinking about this from very early on in his career. I really appreciate the Whitney and Robert Gober taking the time to curate a show like this, because I think Burchfield is probably one of the most influential and just fantastic early modernists in American art. This is titled Storm and Rocks, and he worked on this from 1918 to 1950. And this is another great example of his kind of hallucinatory landscapes. I don't know how many of you have eaten peyote, watched the sunrise, but this kind of radiation lines and vaporous landscapes are the kind of stuff that you would see if you're on psychedelics.
One of the things that may have contributed to Burchfield's sort of lack of largest reputation is that you don't see his works on walls in museums, on in the permanent collections. 90% of what he did was in watercolor. So this picture was in the 1956 Whitney retrospective. And Burchfield, as you'll find out later, was very known for changing his paintings over the years and working on a picture for 25 years, adding pieces to it and changing the material. But this one had significant fading in this area. It's blue. It used to be purple. But the red part of the purple and red part, the purple faded, so you're left with the blue. Burchfield wanted to restore this picture before it was loaned to the Whitney, and he was rebuffed by the Cleveland Museum director and curator at the time, who didn't want him to touch it. And so he wrote an angry letter, which Bob found in the Whitney archives, about how, can you imagine a museum director not allowing an artist to restore that picture?
Oh, this is interesting. This is one of the few oil paintings. This is titled Old House by Creek, 1938. Most of the work is watercolors or drawings on paper. This gallery is a real treat. You get a chance to see a lot of his sketches. Works on paper. And a lot of this stuff, when you look at it closely, does have the kind of patterning and symmetrical psychedelic designs that you might run across with psychiatric patients or people in mental hospitals.
He clearly meant for them to be saved because they were cataloged and the directions on them were marked. When you see columns of figures, it's him and his wife playing gin rummy. There's a doodle in the far right hand of this wall that he's listing the
Period wallpaper on the walls of this gallery. Oh, maybe it's based on his painting here. Sunflower design. Oh, this is interesting. This is the wooden roller that produced the wallpaper design. This is a great piece showing how he would add on to his watercolors. And sometimes he would subtract from them as well. It's called the Red Pool 1918. Now, some of these larger pieces, you can see the seams where he's glued them together. Right there.
So I was casting about for some way to visually present this technique that he was developing of taking early drawings and expanding them. And we found these three pieces, but we didn't know what was in the center, or we were having trouble figuring it out. And then we figured it out, but we had no idea where it was. And then my assistant on the show, who works in my studio, remembered that she had seen this work in a bedroom on the Upper West Side.
This is the last gallery, and they've got some of his, I guess what you would call masterworks. And here you can see how he was adding on to these pieces and kind of extending them out.
Burchfield, the last 20 years of his life, suffered from innumerable physical maladies. I mean, it was everything from a heart attack to an extremely bad back. He had to wear a corset and sleep on the floor. He had very bad asthma. He had extremely low blood pressure, which caused fainting. He had what was called then lumbago, and it really went on, but he persevered through all those illnesses. A devout agnostic until his crisis in the mid-40s, and then he converted to his wife's religion, which was Lutheranism, which is hardly an ecstatic religion that would inspire these late works, but I think reflected a search for meaning in his life. But he thought of nature as God, and they do reference cathedrals and religious imagery.
This is James Kalm reporting on Charles Burchfield, Heat Waves in the Swamp, curated by Robert Gober. Thanks, Kate.
full is gone.